the whole world. I mean, maybe this is at the heart of what I'm sort of almost like a belief system, yeah. But the whole world seems to be going in the direction of what should you do,
Yeah.
what you have to do, and I'm going in the other fucking direction.
Welcome to the Lockdown Life podcast. My name is Jamie Flynn. You can get in touch with me on Twitter at jam_fly. All podcasts are available on our YouTube channel, and while you are there, I would appreciate it if you hit the subscribe button. Welcome to the Lockdown Life podcast. My guest today is arguably the most famous Irish poker player ever. He is best known for finishing in 5th place in the 2005 WSOP main event. That 5th place accounts for 1.75 million of his 4.8 million career tournament earnings. He is currently joining me today, having a couple of glasses of wine and playing a couple of tournaments on the side. Welcome to the podcast, Andy Black.
It's very nice. Welcome.
I hope you appreciated it.
No, I remember when I in the days when I used to do a lot of interviews, I got fucked off talking about poker, you know?
Yeah.
So people would kind of interview me about sort of stuff, and the only thing I wouldn't discuss would be poker.
Yeah.
And we had a series of kind of interviewers that'd be tearing their hair out, you know. They wouldn't know much about poker anyway, but they would be sort of employed to kind of interview you. Now the days have changed now. A lot of the guys, I think, because the internet and a lot of the people who are interviewing, a lot more of them know something about poker. But there was a time, sort of up to I don't know, maybe 2006, 2007, and most of the people that actually interviewed you didn't have any fucking clue about poker. So it was, and it's bizarre and paradoxical, the fact that they really struggled with you not doing an interview, which included poker. It's almost like their minds were kind of set on some kind of like, right, I'm going to ask you questions like, how do you feel when you've just been knocked out of the tournament, or, you know, just sort of some pre-program questionnaire. So it was rather tough for them to sort of, you know, go off script, I think.
Yeah.
But I won't do that now. I might talk about poker now.
Yeah.
I'm more into talking about poker at the moment, you know.
As I said, we're perfectly happy to go off script from time to time as well if the mood strikes us.
Good. Oh, good.
Yeah. You're playing away there, so that could bring us on to our first topic, Andy. I suppose you won a scoop recently. How's online been going for you overall?
Yeah, I was kind of shit at online in the day, you know, because I was just, I don't know, I just didn't like it, yeah. And you know, I've got the odd result here and there, like but oh, here we go. There's Jack, early position, probably shouldn't have. And it's only because of the lockdown. I mean, I played the odd sort of thing, over the years, but only because of the lockdown have I sort of. That's the first ever scoop or W Cup or one of these festivals that I actually played sort of a significant number of tournaments. So that's been kind of really interesting. Okay, a second here. Okay, I'll tell you if this is interesting. Oh dear, it's bad. So basically, that's. I mean, I made a scoop main event final table one time, and all right, I'm just about to go all in on a bluff here. I'm gonna get called.
This is Andy's bluffing face, ladies and gentlemen.
Got through. 26,000 in there, had 35,000 back. I had the lone ace in the backdoor flush. Okay, it's okay, I survived. So that's interesting. And I had in my head for many years that I wasn't really an internet player. You know, you can't read people, you can't do this, you can't do that. Yeah, which a lot of people, you know, I'm sure can relate to. Who think of themselves as live players. Yeah. And I sort of realized over the last period, just before that win, that this was a load of bollocks. You know, I'd just been fooling myself all these years, because a lot of the same guys guys who can do well live do well online. And
Yeah.
the truth of the matter is that you know, a lot of the basics are the same. Also, people people I don't know, you know, when they're weak, when they're strong, when they're playing well, when they're not playing well, etc., etc. You know, from someone like me who doesn't really play standard poker, I realized that actually, yeah, you know, is there connectivity issues there?
Yeah, yeah. I think we're good there. We're good now again. Yeah.
Okay, I've just got a very difficult decision with Ace King 24 big blinds. Look badass. Okay, I'll go all in. The Okay, we're just about to put all of our chips in. With Ace King and the Gaggle pulls. So yeah, so I had this sort of thing in my head that it was a different beast,
Yeah.
and that I didn't have those. You know, I didn't have those kind of skills. And I've sort of bothered sort of talking to a few people, and I bothered thinking about it, and I bothered sort of seeing what the story is, and I bothered actually playing an awful lot. So this
Yeah.
is the first time maybe ever I played a lot. Yeah. And I just kind of realized, wait a second, like about 90% of this stuff is the same. You know,
Yeah.
it's sort of as high as that. So I thought, okay, well, I'll try and give this a go. You know, and before that, you know, I come close in so many tournaments. You know, in during the school.
Yeah.
So I had a lot of shots. You know, where I was down to last 20, 30, 40 players, that kind of thing. You know. And a lot of them in big fields. So I think for the first time ever, it's kind of odd, you know. I feel like I'm sort of maybe I'm having a senior moment or something, you know. But it's like, I feel like, no, I can actually beat this, you know. I actually have a sense of what's going on. So that's kind of interesting, you know. So yeah, so that's quite exciting, you know, for me.
Yeah, I've definitely done similar now. I haven't played much online the last few years, but during lockdown, I've been playing a bit more as well. And are you how many tables are you playing?
Oh, I don't play more than 4, you know, but I tend to play better when I play kind of two tables, you know.
Yeah.
So two tables is sort of my, you know, best. Now I have a really tricky situation coming up here. 4 diamonds, ace, jack, jack, king, deuce, and I have an ace.
Ace, jack, king, deuce. Okay.
Nasty. I'm gonna fold this one. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, but it's more to me. It's a kind of attitude, you know. It's a kind of belief that my game is good enough, you know. And kind of what I tend to be good at is like the whole world. I mean, maybe this is at the heart of what I'm sort of almost like a belief system, yeah. But the whole world seems to be going in the direction of what should you do,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
what you have to do, and I'm going in the other fucking direction. Like
Yeah.
I'm actually going more extreme in the other direction. So what do I mean by that? Yeah. So a decision comes along to you, and the textbook says you do this, that, or the other. Yeah,
Yeah.
etc., etc. That's a really interesting situation. 8, 6, 5, 4 of hearts, and I have a pair of kings with the king of hearts. Now there's 8, 6, 5, 4, 10 of hearts. 12,600 in there, and I've 28,000. And the guy's gone all in. Let's see if he's got the ace of hearts. Oh, he has. Unbelievable. That's pretty weird, yeah.
Yeah.
So you guys aren't very lucky. So the so there's all these things about you have to do this, you have to do that run throughout poker. And my sense is that it's almost a bit like you know, anyone who does drugs or gets drunk, you know, who drinks a bit, you know, it's a bit like or fancies religion, you know. And any of those things you can kind of overdose on.
Yeah.
You know, it's almost like you do too much of them. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's a bit like that. You're doing too much of something. Yeah. Um, and so people do too much of I have to do this, I have to do that, and when you actually think about it, yeah, there's sort of three sort of options in a poker hand. Yeah, one, yeah, you know, it's an awfully good idea to bet, yeah, and you're going to win, yeah, right.
Mm.
Two, you're not fucking sure, and three, you're going to fucking lose, yeah. These are the three options, yeah.
Yeah.
Now, the truth of the matter is that if you can put as many as possible sort of your bets into, you're going to fucking win,
Yeah.
right? So the best ones are obviously the ones where no one called you, because then there are no odds, right? You actually win the hand, yeah,
Yeah.
right. And that might be because you might have a good hand, you might have a bad hand, but you win the hand. The next kind of group, I'd say, is where you're a very, very significant favorite. Yeah.
Mm.
So you're a very, very significant favorite. Now, if you can accumulate enough of those kind of hands, yeah, you put them together and you get enough of those kind of hands, yeah, then it's very, very difficult to beat you. Yeah.
Mm.
Whereas a lot of the modern game seems to be going in the direction of, you're putting in mathematically sort of, if you've got that 55% or whatever it is, yeah,
Yeah.
then that's great. What that seems to take out of it is what I find interesting about poker is that if you make a correct decision based on what exactly you reckon the guy has,
Mm.
yeah, and that could be a fold of a pair of queens pre-flop, or it could be some kind of odd bluff, yeah, and if you put enough of those together in a row, yeah,
Mm.
then it absolutely destroys this more. It's a bit like fucking. If you ever see Rounders, it's a bit
Mm.
like Kinnicky and Rounders, and life becomes a fucking grind, and now obviously there's the really good players are mixing, doing all sorts of things, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Which are amazing, yeah. But much of the teaching in poker seems to be teaching you to sort of almost not be amazing.
Yeah.
Much of the conversation you hear amongst relatively average players or even pretty good players, yeah, seems to be about what you should do, and
Yeah.
this to me feels like yeah, it just feels like it's missing a trick a bit, and
Yeah.
and it's kind of interesting. I mean, one kind of example that's sort of which probably illustrates the point a bit as to things changing a bit in this direction at the moment is in the last few years the amount that people re-raise, the 3 bets and 4 bets,
Yeah.
particularly the 3 bets. Yeah, I've gone from being sort of minimum 3 bets to kind of 4 or 5 times. And what's that fucking all about? What's that's all about is, or the main part of it is, well, if you fucking raise and no one fucking calls you, there are no odds. There are no odds. You just win.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you get those right, you win with no risk. Yeah.
Yeah.
Rather than it being, and so it's fascinating that is one of the changes. And funnily enough, that's what poker used to be like. That's what people used to do when they raise. Well, actually, they might even raise 7 or 8 times as much.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and yeah, so it's interesting. I mean, it's interesting. There was a hand that Justin Bonomo played in the final table. It was on Poker News, and I don't know whether you saw it, but it was on Poker News, and it was and the Super High Roller Bowl heads up. They had like 7 hands between him and Michael Adamo, and he bet 6 times. There was a kind of, I can't remember exactly what the board was, but basically on the river, a backdoor flush and the deuce paired on the river.
Yeah.
And Bonomo had fuck all, and he bet 6 times the pot
Okay. Yeah.
all in on a bluff on the river, and
Mm.
he got the other guy to fold the two. I mean,
Yeah.
and now, now that is pushing it. Like I was fucking thinking, wow, that's really interesting. I mean, that's really pushing it to a kind of different level. But the principle is there. The principle is almost like unwanted pots or pots where you've definitely won.
Yeah.
Yeah. So a pot on the river that you definitely won is one of those hands. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and personally, I think if you put those all of these kind of hands together, then that's when poker gets interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, definitely advocating for a more kind of aggressive strategy. Try and take down as many of these pots that you can.
It's not so much. No, wait a second. It's not so much that it's.
Yeah, you're saying it's more the kind of the high success spots. You're saying you need to kind of nail them as much as you can.
Yeah, and that
Yeah,
could be a fold. That could
yeah,
be a
yeah.
ridiculous fold. That could be. One of the things I've noticed online a lot is that um, a lot of the games come down to, a decent number of the games come down to what you do with ace king.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, it could be whether you win with ace king, whether you don't get a lot of chips in with ace king, whether you do get a lot of chips in with ace king, yeah, and
Yeah,
etc. etc. So the kind of things that you want to avoid, yeah, much the same as in live poker is there's certain kind of big pots. Let's just call them big
yeah,
pots.
yeah.
And in those big pots, like you got to fucking get those right.
Hmm.
These hands that you have, which you have to get it right. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. And if you've got I don't know, a kind of straightforward strategy with those kind of hands, I reckon that's just a bad idea.
yeah, yeah,
Because the one thing you really don't want to do is you don't open yourself up to, um, you know, say you've got a decent number of chips in a tournament. The last thing you want to do, right, is get in a really bad situation with them.
mm,
If you get in a race with them, okay.
yeah,
But if you end up in a really bad situation, like ace king against aces,
mm,
that's a complete disaster. Or like a pair of tens against a pair of queens. Yeah.
yeah.
These are really kind of bad things. Yeah. So I don't know. What do you think yourself?
I think if you look at the river spot, say, and someone bets a river, you've to then decide, do you call or do you fold? And I think if you're to look at the GTO answer to that, it kind of says, you should call with this amount of hands and fold with this amount of hands. Whereas in practice, I think it's the guy, it's easy to say the guy either has it or he doesn't.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
in practice, there's enough factors there that on the river you should have enough information built up from the hand that you can make it slightly better than random guess. You can know what your
Fuck,
GTO.
slightly better than
Yeah,
random.
yeah,
I mean, it's sort of like each of us has to be very, very honest
yeah,
about how often we know.
yeah,
Yeah, so different people, depending on their skill level in sort of reading those kind of situations, know more of the time or less of the time. Now, I know for a fact that I'm up like, I'm some giant percentage. Yeah, where I lose my kind of money is I just say, oh, fuck it, I'm not going to listen to that voice, and I do the opposite thing. So I've spent like 30 years trying to like sort that shit out, and I still haven't sorted it out, but I'm still trying. Yeah.
yeah,
So I have periods where I sort that out. But so the question is, if you're asking, if anyone's listening to this, the question to them is how much of the time do you know? Yeah.
yeah,
What to do. Yeah. And what I found over the years is whenever I talk to people, um, they often know more often than they give themselves credit for.
Yeah.
They actually know. So you talk to somebody and you find that if they thought about it a little more, so they'll come off and they'll say, well, I had to, your man had that, and then it'll turn out, they didn't have information on the guy. Or maybe, he just sat down at the table. Yeah. So they didn't actually have any information on him. Yeah. Or it might be that he was at the table and actually he'd hardly played a hand. So therefore it meant that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or, he actually, when you asked, so did you look at him? How did he look? And it turned out, he looked very solid, or if it's on the internet, it's sort of like, yeah, I played with him before, and there, he does fuck around a bit with sort of less sort of smaller stacks, but then when he's got bigger stacks, he doesn't do that, or there'll be some kind of piece of information, yeah. Which for some reason we don't actually decide to admit, that's actually what, that was there. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's and I think it's, I just think that there's a, that there's a whole world sort of questions around that. I mean, I had a very interesting conversation with Jack Sinclair. I was doing some training over in England. Just sort of like, high performance kind of stuff a couple of years ago. And I was doing kind of group sort of training, and I was just pootering around with it with a staking company at a party poker gig in Nottingham. And then I did some stuff in at the World Series Poker Europe. And but what you'd find is that people again and again and again had more information than they realized. Yeah. They were more precise, there was more, and especially in these big situations. Yeah. Anything that's unusual, for example, a good one is, where somebody kind of goes all in for like 10 big blinds. Yeah. Right. And then somebody else raises. Yeah. Now there's a lot more information in this hand.
Yeah.
Than there might be if it had just been a raise, re-raise.
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
So there's a million situations where, for one reason or another, there's more information than you might actually sort of, that you might think. Yeah, and if you were to take GTO to that kind of thing, and then you apply it to what you said earlier, which is kind of like, he has it or he doesn't. And you can do that at any stage of a poker hand. Then you can stick your GTO up your arse.
Yeah. I think it's when it comes to discussing poker, it's I think, Joe, a lot of these training sites, or a lot of coaches or whatever, it's a lot more convenient to just talk about the stack sizes, the number of big blinds, the opening ranges, and all that kind of stuff when talking about poker hands.
It's not that isn't important. I'm not knocking that. Right?
Yeah, of course.
I'm not knocking that. But I say I've done, like, say I've been comment on the Irish Open or something like that, or comment in some kind of tournament, yeah. And often the other guy who's commented, oh look, I just raised with 2 kings, 18 big blinds, and a guy with, like, he's the chip leader. Yeah, he is. He stuck it all in with a pair of 4s, and he hit a 4.
Oh, for fuck's sake.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Well, look, I've got knocked out of 2 tournaments since I've been playing here, and both of them I had a pair of kings.
Good omen. So yeah, very good omen for I'm a good luck.
God, well, at least that means it was only $100 and 200 tournament. That's pretty unlucky there. So the and so I mean, you're probably knocking around more than me, but what I got a sense of was, good commentators, nice guys, but they were fairly fucking determined to only talk, or to primarily talk about that stuff, and then have more fluffy, colloquial conversations.
Yeah.
About life. Yeah.
Yeah.
And arguably in both of those, there's a lack of depth.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
It's a
I
bit
agree
harsh,
with that.
but there you go.
Yeah.
So
That's fair.
but let's put the second one to one side. In terms of the poker stuff, yeah. And but that is a coincidence. In terms of in terms of the poker stuff, it's not that these things aren't important, yeah.
Mm.
But and arguably, the guys who really executed like computers,
Mm.
like the fucking Dominic Nietzsche's or
Yeah.
those kind of those kind of guys. I can only imagine, or Jack Sinclair. That the way that they execute that is great. But if you're not that guy, if you're not that supercomputer sort of absolute complete brain,
Yeah.
well then my question would be, are you maybe missing a trick if
Yeah.
you're not emphasizing sort of other things? So let's say, in terms of, say, poker and opportunities, what you're actually kind of doing, another way of putting this is you're looking for the easiest opportunities.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
You're looking for lots and lots of easy opportunities. And if you're thinking too much about shoulda, coulda, woulda, well, what happens is that you end up, I think, missing, really, really straightforward opportunities. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then what happens as well, I think, is you end up becoming, maybe you can answer this question. People who are too obsessed with that, this is a guess of mine, and I've never actually said this. This is a guess of mine.
Yeah.
The people who are too obsessed by that are often people who end up short stacked.
Yeah. Yeah.
Would that be true? Would that be the equivalent
I
of like?
Yeah, so I think that it sounds fair because if you look at a standard enough live tournament, Joe, there's a lot of people making a lot of mistakes in a standard whatever €500 or $1,000 live tournament. So if you're playing a very kind of GTO strategy where you're still beating the game quite well, but I think variance plays a much bigger part if you're kind of doing everything by the book, say. Whereas if you're taking a more exploitive approach and you sit down at the table and you see there's these guys that are playing very badly and making very obvious mistakes, or if you get to a river and a guy is very easily bluffed, or this guy never has the nuts here and he's never calling without the nuts, and you can take these very, very exploitive lines, it means the variance is going to be lower. You're going to build stacks easier. Like you're probably the the expert on it. Like these live tournaments, you seem to build a stack quite well in a lot of them. And I assume I've played with you a few times with these ones where you're happy to make these high, quote unquote high variance plays, but you seem to be right more often than not with whatever you want to call that, your read, or it's just a more in-depth analysis of the hand. I think you're taking all the technical factors, but you're also taking all these other thousands of factors that go into making a decision in the hand.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sitting down. I'm looking, rather than looking for what I should do. Yeah. I'm thinking of things like, will this guy deal with an overbet?
Yeah.
I mean, these feel like much more important things. I mean,
Exactly.
Which guy is liable to get all his chips in, or an awful lot of his chips in? Yeah. And then which guy, on the other hand, is liable to, is easy, is a one and done kind of guy. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're looking more and more for that kind of thing. Yeah. And then hopefully, and what, actually what that amounts to, one of the results of that is that I can actually then avoid playing a whole series of marginal hands. The goal, in a sense, is to avoid playing marginal hands.
Yeah.
For me, that's kind of, it's not that, and when I say marginal hand, it's like, you've a queen jack in mid position or something like that,
Mm.
or king jack or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And, you're almost trying to sort of avoid sort of playing that,
Yeah.
Um, uh,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah. I think in essence, it's basically all you're really doing is kind of narrowing the range of a hand your opponent can have. And that's, do you know what I mean? That's a solid poker strategy. So if you can do that and you're confident in your belief to kind of narrow their range so much, then you can just, your decision, you've less of a decision, because it's, this part of the range you can attack, or this part you have to, you have to fold against because it's so strong. So basically what you're doing is just you know, uh, putting them on a much smaller number of possible hands and making the best move against that number of hands. Whereas if you're playing a more, as you said, GTO strategy, you have to assume that they have a wider range of
well,
hands, whereas that's not usually
well,
true.
no, well, what I'm actually doing, what I was trained in when I was playing poker, and then the more GTO guys laugh at this. I'm putting people on an exact hand all the time.
Yeah. Which can be done. I think that can be done in a lot of situations, but I think that
Not a range of interrupt, but an exact hand.
yeah. And I think there's definitely a lot of situations where where that can work. But I think it's a similar principle, isn't it? It's the same kind of principle.
Similar, yeah. I suppose it's more an amount. Again, let's say I think there's a bigger amount that is possible to put people on an exact hand, and then as you say, there's a kind of there's a range hand. So maybe it's the same kind of point that the people are kind of going range hands. I remember there was a hand that was commentated on in the Irish Open, and I was close to winning the Irish Open like 5 years in a row or something like that. Yeah, and I got down to the last like 3 tables, 5 years now, and I went out with various mistakes and races and stuff like that. So some were avoidable, but then one time I got to the final table, and I can't remember, some famous American guy was commentating on it. It's maybe 4 or 5 years ago, something like that. And I got down to the final table, yeah, and it was the aggressive player opened. A tight German guy, I think it was, re-raised in the cutoff, yeah, and I was in small blind with ace king suited, yeah, and I had maybe 45, 50 big blinds, something like that, yeah, 40 to 50 big blinds, and I knew your man had aces, but anyway, I didn't fucking play the hand right. I stuck the money in, and funnily enough, the big blind had queens. Your man did actually have aces, yeah. We all got the money in, the aces won. That was it. So in the interview afterwards, I kind of started saying this, yeah, and the American pro commentator, I said I was really disappointed because I kind of knew he had aces, and in some ways aces are an easier hand to read than any other hand, because there you are, you're sitting there. Just put yourself in your own shoes now. You're sitting there and you get aces, and this is you're this hold'em player, right? And you're sitting there, you get loads of hands, and every like 220 hands, you get a pair of aces. It's the best hand. So you feel a certain, you look, I think, and feel a certain way. So in some ways, it's quite an easy hand to read. The next easiest hand to read is kind of ace king, because it's kind of very, very happy. It's like a forward moving hand, but there's a certain slight vulnerability there. But it's more like a gusto hand, So in some ways, these, like, just take these two hands. They're kind of in some ways quite easy hand to read. Yeah.
Mm.
And whenever I said this, I was vilified for this. That you can't do that. So how can you do that? How can you say a guy has aces?
Yeah.
And I think, again, it's kind of the same conversation.
Mm.
So the question is, like, if anyone's listening to this and thinking about this, the question is not whether you. The question is what might you be able to incorporate? Yeah, that's the true question. So if you're someone like Jack Sinclair, like I mentioned him earlier when I chatted to him about all this stuff. He has no interest in it.
Okay.
He actually thinks that trying to work in high performance stuff or something like that, trying to work on your mind or trying to sort of get yourself in a place where you sort of focus better, is maybe a waste of time. Yeah. Because you'd be better spending all your time looking at solvers and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I thought about it, and for Jack Sinclair, that's probably, it's probably true. So the question is, like, and if I'm at the other end of the scale, yeah, I'm more of a kind of field player. If I'm at the other end of the scale, yeah. Well, then the question would be, where are you on that scale? And given you're trying to figure that out, then how much effort should you put in to whether it's looking at solvers or looking at this other stuff? Yeah. And I think most people, you could argue that most people who are kind of feely, touchy players and think they can read things, they don't put the effort into the mathematical study. And most people that, do the mathematical study, they don't put the effort into the other stuff. And so the question is, where are you? Where are you with that? I think that's a more interesting question.
Yeah. I think so. It is. So that's the thing. It's
very personal. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's very personal. So I can't. Yeah, I'm not saying here's how you should do that. You should do this. It's more like it starts with trying to be honest about where you're at, and then work from there.
Yeah,
so,
yeah. I definitely agree with the kind of if you want to make money in poker, it's going after the low hanging fruit is you got to do that, and I think a lot of people, like, you can learn your ranges and your solvers and all that, but a lot of people get very confused with this kind of stuff, and I've definitely found myself at times in the hand, I'm thinking about a certain kind of path or a certain way of thinking, and I completely forget to think about this whole other part of the hand, and I make my decision, and a second later I'm just thinking, what about this other massive obvious factor? You didn't even think about that. I'll be thinking, Jesus.
Yeah, and it's like, So basically, you're looking for, put the solvers aside, and arguably you're looking for, think in terms of low hanging fruit in a given hand. Yeah. The question is there a defining piece of the hand?
Yeah, well said, Joe.
Which makes the other person, strong or weak, and whether you can actually, act accordingly. And the truth is, when you really have something really, really obvious going on, there's just something kind of obvious.
Yeah,
you know.
Often the case. Yeah. I might. We might step back in time a bit, Andy, and I'll talk to you a bit. You grew up in Belfast.
That was my going back in time noise.
So we're back. A young Andy Black. He grows up in Belfast and comes across poker when studying law at Trinity College. I suppose what was life like before you discovered the great game of poker?
Well, actually, I started on the poker machines.
Okay.
I mean, that was the first poker I ever played. I used to play cards with my mother, and she wasn't very good, So I learned how to play against tight. She was very tight,
Yeah.
you know. She was always very careful. She'd only bid in these games, you know. So she'd only play in games. You know, we'd play 110 or 45. It's
Yeah.
sometimes called, but same thing, you know. So we'd play. She just only play carefully. So I learned how to beat careful players, or to try and beat careful players. You know, you're just a bit more aggressive than them. Not
Yeah.
way more aggressive, but you're as aggressive as you can get away with. You know.
Yeah.
And the sorry, I'm playing a game here. So and then the so yeah, so that was that, and then I learned to read people by my father would come in from golf, you know, playing golf, and he'd come in from playing golf, and he would try and he would come in with a certain score, you know, he'd had a certain score,
Mm.
and uh, I would try and figure out what score he actually had. Yeah, you know, by the way he looked.
Yeah.
And as time went along, he would actually, you know, more and more try and, you know, deceive me. Yeah, you know, as to what was actually happening. You know,
Mm.
so 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 that was kind of interesting. So that's how I learned to read people, you know, and eventually I got to the point, or what started me, where, you know, he'd come in and he'd put me off, and he'd sort of act a bit bedraggled, and
Yeah.
I would actually try and guess, you know, I'd be guessing the exact score he got, you know, so I'd be
Mm.
trying to guess the exact score
Not, not a
of how he
range.
did.
You wouldn't be trying to guess a range of scores, no?
No, because he come in, you know, because if you're, I didn't play golf, yeah, but anyone who plays golf, you know, like, you know, it's not a range. You come in and you've got a number. Your number is
Yeah.
80 or 90 or 75, you know, and your number in each hole, right? So what we play this game, right, where he'd often talk about the first three holes, you know, and he was a bit of a pessimist from Glasgow, yeah.
Yeah.
So he'd come in and he'd look a certain way, and you go birdie, par, birdie, yeah. So he'd have in his head like what he got in his first three holes, and because he was pessimist, if he didn't start off well, he'd be kind of fucked off, you know.
Mm.
So all his good rounds started off. You know, if he come in, he might have look like he had a good round. Then I would further try and guess what he started with, you know.
Yeah.
So that in the first three holes, yeah. So that's kind of odd, really. And it's only looking back I realized I would do that. That went on for years, you know.
Yeah.
So the so that was years, and then when I came to college, you know, also I played Monopoly. I was a very good Monopoly player, you know, when I was growing up, but I didn't have much competition. And then when I came to college, I played poker machines, and I lost money on it. But we had a guy who figured out some system on it, and we ended up beating poker machines to some extent, you know, in the end of that. And then one day somebody brought me into it. It's 30, probably 33 years ago, into a poker club. And I mean, a lot of people know the story, but anyway, there were free sandwiches, and the first buy-in was free in a £5 tournament. So
Mm.
you didn't have to bring any money in, you know.
Yeah.
So you come in and you try and survive, you know. So it's like your second buy-in you paid a fiver for, yeah. And then eventually, you know, and you try and eat as many sandwiches as possible because they were free. And you know, and when I first played, you know, I was pretty tight, you know. And even so, if we move on, like for many years, you know, I tended not to borrow money. If I went broke, I'd sort of, you know, just get by, you know, wait for the dole or something like that, you
Yeah.
know, for quite a few years. You know, I was doing jobs in corporate entertainment, you know, where, you know, you deal fun casinos and stuff, you know.
Mm.
I'm actually finished my law degree, but in the middle of this, but I never really borrowed money, and I was often broke, and it was really tough, you know. And actually, you know, a lot of the old school Irish guys would talk about that. You know, it's almost like it's hard to describe, but the best way of describing it is for many years in Ireland, you if somebody new came into a poker club, everyone would subtly turn around and look at them
Yeah.
because it was such a surprise. Yeah,
Yeah.
there wasn't a lot of new people. Yeah,
Mm.
and if that guy, whoever it was, won in the side game, yeah, you know, that was a complete disaster, you know. So you know, a whole bunch of guys who were just trying to survive. Basically, it was real grifting stuff, you know.
Yeah.
You know, there was no chance of making a fortune, but you might just be able to if you're pretty good. You'd just be able to survive. And 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 then when I went over to the World Series, I played the World Series main event in '97. So at this stage, I've been playing 10 years, you know. And eventually, I got over to the World Series in '96. But in '97, I played the main event, and there were only 300 people in the main event. You know, it's a different, and so imagine all around the world, you know, there's all these little card rooms all around the world, but only 300 people, and I'd say probably fucking 270 of them were from America. Yeah. So there's only like, you know, 30 or 40 people or something like that managed to make it from outside America to the World Series. And the numbers are so small. One of the weird things about it was that your name, you know, every time somebody signed up or won a satellite and got into the World Series main event, their name would be written on this giant whiteboard.
Okay, yeah.
Like you know, 50 feet wide.
Yeah, just all the name.
Right. There was every time somebody wrote down a name, it would be on the whiteboard. And I always remember, like, when I was there first and I saw this whiteboard first, and Huck Seed won the World Series in '96, and he was the last name that was written down. He was playing a cash game with like Doyle Brunson and Chip Reese and somebody else, and he was the last. He was the last name that was written down. Yeah, very weird, you know. So but so that those are the numbers of people, which is really kind of mad, really, you know. I mean, another thing, just from a race point of view, you know, that year in the World Series when I played in '97, there were 2 black players in the field. Yeah, that was it. There was only 2 black players out of the 320 people, you know.
Yeah.
So as you look back in history, right? You know, I mean, a lot of guys don't study the history. I always studied the history. Who played were kind of American, and 90% of them were from Texas. Yeah. And then eventually, you know, in the '70s, you know, and then slowly that changed, and you know, and then eventually, you know, and by the time you got to the '80s, it was like there were mostly Texans and some Jews. Yeah. And then by the time you got to the '90s, there were nearly all Americans, but some Asians. Yeah. And then by the time you got to sort of the 2000s, what you had is it's a different decision here. You know, it starts now becoming a broader thing, you know. So you got like Europeans, etc., in the 2000s, and it's kind of like, I don't know. It's just these are different times, you know, and maybe along the way some of the kind of wisdom is kind of lost. I mean, for me personally, it's almost like trying to actually, like, if I look back at 2005, you know, I'm a much more aggressive player now than I probably was then.
Really, yeah.
But it just didn't require it then. You know, in some ways it didn't require it. You know, there wasn't that, you know, because people were playing tighter essentially. Yeah, and a lot of the notions of what was possible, but you know, weren't in play yet. So it's like you sort of do what you know. So in 2005, when I look back in 2005, and in '97, I remember being all in the bluff in the first round of the table.
Oh,
you know, in the main event.
Yeah.
on Fifth Street against the guy who won, Ted Forrest, the guy who won 3 bracelets that year.
Yeah.
And then I showed him, I showed him, it was a very good bluff though. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but then, yeah, in 2005, I mean, what's dogged my career, and this is it. So here I am 30 years later, what's dogged me was my skill has sort of improved over the years. My reading ability was always pretty good. Yeah. But I've
Yeah.
had moments where I played certain hands and that's brought me to a different level. I've kind of sucked it up and I've gone, what the fuck do I actually think is happening here?
Mm. Yeah.
I've thrown away the rule book. I've thrown away everything, and I've just gone, what do I actually, what do I actually think is going on here? I don't really care. Yeah. And often that comes down to my initial kind of read of the situation. Somewhere in there, it's like, that someone has a certain hand. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's whenever I stray away from that things seem to not work out, So it's for me, it's always been a battle trying to actually kind of do my best. Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, I wonder. I wonder where that applies to a lot of other people. I mean, it's almost not your skill level. It's more, are you actually trying to do your best?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think
Do
that.
you find that? Do you find that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's I think that's the best approach to take to anything, try and do the best you can. Yeah, like I've definitely I think I'm fairly, fairly decent at kind of, handling bad beats or handling that kind of stuff, but it's definitely when I make a mistake and I know myself, I was like, Jesus, that was a
So the
mistake.
question I'd have, it'd be the same question for everyone. If
Yeah.
you just take a step back and say, right, you know, because people are always, again, talking, people often don't seem to talk much about, I made a mistake.
Yeah.
I mean, I just find I find this very odd, I mean, because, everything I'm thinking about is, when I don't do well in the tournament, um, I don't know, maybe 30% of the time, I was never going to do well.
Mm.
It didn't matter what I would do; it just wasn't going to work out,
Yeah.
But the rest of the time, I nearly always make mistakes,
Yeah.
and some of those times, even if I do well, yeah, I make a number of mistakes.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, that to me is more the question,
Mm.
So and over the years, I've just noticed that not many people seem to think like that, one way or another.
Yeah.
They don't, that's not the way they're actually thinking. So either it's, I'm just the worst player than they are, and they don't make many mistakes. Two, maybe I'm a bit more, maybe I'm a much better player than they are. Yeah. And I just seem to have fucking some kind of screw loose. So I'm seeing more things than they are. Yeah. Or a more interesting thing is, are people accessing all the skills that they have? That's a much more interesting question,
Mm.
And it's easy to sort of be a bit of a sheep, and kind of like think, because let's say you're talking. I mean, you probably know more about this than me. Is there a sort of, in any walk of life, there can be a strong kind of, pressure to fit in,
Yeah. Yeah.
So talk in a certain way. Gradually, this culture, is
Yeah.
created where you sort of have to fit in, and much of it is probably quite good.
Yeah.
But and that's not what I dispute. It's more that it's almost like the good is the enemy, into a kind of way of thinking that I think always in poker, the idea has been, that you're trying to play slightly differently
Hmm.
than everybody else.
Yeah.
Now, in a given hand, you're it's almost like you're trying to see what the other guy's doing and respond appropriately to that. Or you can look at it in a game, you know, if everyone's playing too loose, well, then you can play tighter, you know, or whatever, you know.
Yeah.
Or, but you can keep sort of, uh, can you can keep kind of pushing this notion, yeah.
Hmm.
And my sort of uh, my question with all of this is quite simply, what are we doing ourselves? You know, what is actually happening? You know, so and that's really it. You know, I mean, I know it sounds a bit kind of vague, but I don't think it is. You know, it's more like where do you stack up yourself? You know,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah. Yeah. I just, yeah, a couple of things on what you said. I think the making mistakes thing, I think, and there being a certain way to speak about things, or to way to talk about your have a certain way you think about poker is I think that's both in poker and in life. I think that's a huge mistake a lot of people make. They don't ever want to be seen to be wrong. They don't want to ever think that they made a mistake, and you're just costing yourself so much when you act like that. It's just thinking you have to act a certain way or say a certain thing because that's the smart thing to
Yeah,
say.
it's very odd, really,
Yeah.
isn't it? It's just really odd.
Yeah.
It's odd if you just take a step back from it. What, like, what? Are you all fucking Trump voters? What's the story? You know? Yeah. So it's like, I mean, because he is the epitome of that.
Yeah.
Or you could argue that somebody on the very extreme, rigid radical left, would be
Yeah.
also the epitome of that as well. Or somebody you could argue that's in the middle and absolutely obsessed with balance and sort of,
Yeah. Yeah. That's a very good
stuff
point.
like that, rather than what the fuck has happened. To my mind, that's another extreme. Or somebody, for example, religiously, people can be very extreme religiously. What's fascinating is the people who are in reaction to those kind of, they might go, well, I don't believe in God,
Yeah.
and that's kind of interesting because that's the most omniscient view of all.
Yeah.
That's the most deterministic. I mean, how would you know that there was nothing? I mean,
Yeah.
that's astonishing. I mean, that's
Yeah.
a level of comprehension. Yeah. Now, if you turn around and says, "Well, I don't fucking know what's going on,
Exactly.
but
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't believe in this God stuff," that's it. That's a different notion. Yeah.
Mm.
Right. So all around us are extremes, and maybe that is the ultimate thing that one can exploit.
Yeah. Yeah. I think again, if you look at what's going on today, I really like listening to kind of the poker community in these extreme times, or everything's kind of left or right, or it's
Oh, really? See, I don't follow any of this, so I'm
yeah.
looking. I'm just guessing.
Yeah, I think in the poker community, what I really like is that the poker community just tries to take things on its merits and make the best decision. Because as you said, like if you want to compare it to a poker hand, if you're very left or right on a certain issue, or if you're left or right, if your way of thinking always has to be one extreme or the other, it's that's not a good way to play poker. You're going to take every hand as it comes, play every opponent as it comes, and try and make the best decision you can make with the information. And often there's no, often you get in a hand of poker, and it doesn't really matter what you do. You can flip a coin. It's such a difficult, close situation that you can flip a coin. So appreciation for the fact that everything isn't binary. That there's not a right or wrong answer to every question, and we know that in poker more than anything. So I think if people kind of appreciated that a bit more, we'd definitely be in a better place, because as you said, everything is kind of extreme. And interesting what you said about even if someone is in the middle and totally balanced, that's not often the best
Yeah.
things as well. That's an interesting take, actually. I never thought about it that way, but that's
Of
yeah,
course.
I like it.
There are
Yeah.
three types of, one of the oldest ones I can, I did a lot of shit in this kind of stuff, but there are three types of ego. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what are the three types of ego? The obvious one. I'll give you the obvious one and see if you can guess the other two. Yeah.
Okay.
So the obvious one is, that you think you're better than someone, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what are the other two?
So the first ego is if you think you're better than someone. I'm guessing there's one where it's you're kind of your two selves, or you're kind of something like that, where you think you're better than yourself, or you think
Don't think complicated.
okay,
No.
okay, okay,
Don't think simple.
simple.
I've given you the answer.
Okay, is it as simple as one ego is you think you're better than people, and other is you think you're worse than people, and you think you're the same as people?
And the third one is
You're the same as people.
exactly.
Okay, good. You had me under pressure there, Andy. I was, yeah.
No,
I
I'm
put that
meant
one
to
out.
be under pressure. Yeah. So that is that. I mean, that's interesting.
Yeah,
So better, worse, and the same. And the same one is one that most people don't think of. Because that's like, yeah. So I mean, yeah, I could go deeper than that, but I won't.
yeah. We can, yeah. So we can bring it back to your 1997 run. You played the 97 World Series and the 98 World Series. In 97, you finished 14th. The year Stu Unger won his third title.
I know. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Any memories from that summer, even not just the build up to
what.
the main event itself?
Yeah. I have lots of memories from that. Um, I mean, basically, I'd always, because I was just, it's almost like I was a student of the history of poker. So these are the days before the internet. So I would, I studied all of the guys who won the world championship, and in some ways, I wasn't much of a poker player, in an Irish sense, in an odd way. Like, I was kind of good at tournaments, yeah,
Yeah.
but I wasn't I wasn't sort of, I was always regarded as good at tournaments, but I was never maybe a great poker player, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. No, I understand.
And but I always kind of wanted to. I always kind of wanted to win the World Series. Yeah. So to my mind, I'd studied Stu Unger a lot. There was a book written by Tony Holden, which, again, there was very little literature in these times, and he was a British journalist, yeah, and he wrote this book. What's it called? Deal Me In, Shuffle Up and Deal. I can't remember, but anyway, he ended up playing against Holden, yeah, or against Unger, and in the World Series. And he wrote a book about it, So there'd be those kind of things that I'd be trying to, like, sort of grab a hold of, yeah. And so I'm just in a very big hand here. I'm playing some. Oh, that's not worked out well. So basically, I'd always wanted to play Unger, and it's really odd. This is so odd, yeah. But so we got down to the last two tables, yeah. And this again shows how things have changed, yeah. We got down to the last two tables, and so 315 people started. We got down to the last two tables, and it's not like there was a seat draw. You fucking yeah. They spread the cards out on the table, yeah, and then you picked a card. Yeah? How weird is that? Yeah, you actually picked a card at the table, yeah, and and the card I picked was the one that was on the right of, or was on the right of Stu Unger. And often I kind of look back and I kind of go, fuck, what? I knew that card was shit. I could have picked the other card. If I just I had a feeling that card to spread these cards out, and I was just too rushed. Why did I kind of go for that card? Yeah.
Yeah.
So sorry, I'm actually playing some kind of big cash games here.
Okay. I hope I don't affect the big cash games. The small tournaments I was okay taking your focus away, but the big cash games you take your time.
Yeah. So the big decision. Big decision. So the okay, give that up. So Stu Younger decided I just played badly. I made mistakes. There was this fucking thing posted online years ago saying how I had ace queen and ace king and he'd ace queen and blah blah blah. Yeah. It's all a load of bollocks. I just played badly. He got inside my head and I made I he took all my chips twice. Yeah.
Yeah.
And one of the times I managed to get them back. One of the times I didn't. So okay. So that was interesting. And then the next year was kind of sad that basically he I'm not going to go broke again here. I think I am. Wait a second. I'll tell you how big this pot is in a second. No, I didn't go broke. I should have re-raised flop. The next year, Unger, again, I don't know how many people know these stories. I suppose very few people these days. But the very next year, so he won the World Series for the third time, yeah. And the very next year, he we're sitting down, we're all ready to play. I'm thinking, right, I'm gonna get him this time, I'm gonna get him this time. I'm a year older, I'm a year wiser, I'm gonna get him,
Yeah.
This is my chance. And anyway, I kind of was a bit burnt out at poker, and I kind of realized I was probably going to finish up. So I'd actually brought a documentary crew over, and originally they were going to do a documentary on me, but I just sort of said, no, let's do a documentary on, interview a whole bunch of people, Irish people, Americans. Let's interview a bunch of people. It might be really interesting. So these guys came over and they did this documentary, which is $1 million deal. It's on YouTube. Have you seen it?
I watched it. Watched it recently there, actually. I hadn't seen it before. Really cool look at things. Plenty of you guys are interviewed, and gives a good feel for what the World Series was like, John, 98.
Yeah, it's not too bad. It stands the test of time, John Hurt was narrating it, I mean, that was kind of cool,
Yeah.
So, he's still there. Yeah, you froze it. So John Hurt was narrating it, but even we got, funny enough, Matt Damon. For those of you who follow the news, Matt Damon's been stuck in Dalkey, and they just been shooting rounders, So we got him in. We actually got him in the documentary,
Yeah.
So there was all this going on the whole series, and then so we sit down for the main event, and Unger doesn't appear, and the tournament was even delayed for a period, but Unger doesn't appear, everyone's wondering where the fuck is Unger, and it turns out that he was upstairs, sort of out of his head, and he couldn't make it down, and that was the bottom line, he was wasted, and he was unable to actually make it down the stairs, so, and that was how it was, So Um, 14. Okay, sorry, I just was in a big pot there. And the and I just thought, like, fuck, this is my chance to beat him, and he's not making it down, and about later he was dead. He died in his pocket, and he was the closest I'd ever seen in life to someone who was
Yeah.
actually
Sorry,
alive.
I lost you. I lost you there for a second. You were saying Unger. I just missed what you were saying the last couple of seconds there.
Basically, Unger was the closest I'd ever seen to someone in life, and I'm knocked around a bit, who was actually alive. Yeah,
Yeah. Oh,
but
okay.
look dead.
Jesus. Yeah.
He had like a quarter of a nose. He was like grey green in pallor. You know. But it was good to be able to play with him. What can you say?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and then I don't know. Moving on to I was years in a monastery, and then it came out all buzzed up, and I was out in 2004, so I went to monastic situation shortly after that. So in a way, then I only came back in 2004. I think I was briefly out for a month or two in 2002. So I came out in 2004, and then I started playing poker again, and by 2000 I started with nothing, and by 2005 I then managed to, get a result in 2005, and I kind of had the tournament won, Yeah, I had it won, but I kind of fucked it up, Now I did get very unlucky in 2005, but I did fuck it up, So the interestingly now, now the dream would be, now if I can manage to win the World Series sort of now, so sometime in the next few years, now that would be a good story, because I've nearly kind of got there twice. I've been struggling always, struggling with things that most normal poker players, ordinary poker players, struggle with. And I just struggle with, like, endlessly doing something stupid for no fucking reason except I'm in a bit of a rush, So if I manage somehow to kind of conquer that, that would be an interesting story,
Getting one more shot at this wouldn't.
Yeah, that's the
Just one
plan,
more shot.
and I feel like all the kind of, like, in poker you're a bit like a boxer,
Yeah.
So the way I say it, because I'm an emotional player, so you're always getting punched, and it's a bit like, if you can stand up long enough and not get brain damage, hopefully you can learn from all these fucking punches,
Yeah.
So that's kind of like the idea,
Yeah. You were saying when you came out of the monastery and started playing poker again in 2004. What was your relationship with money like? What was your kind of approach to playing poker after all that? Had you a different approach to things?
Oh, it was just it's funny, because I was a lot more positive, and I was sort of at ease with myself, yeah.
Yeah.
And ironically, now years later, I would regard much of the stuff that I learned there as limiting.
Really? Okay.
So, yeah. So I would be, how can I put this into words? It's like, I just think that a lot of people in more organized religion, or people have extreme views, yeah. So the tricky thing, and maybe this applies to everyone, so say you go along and you decide, oh, I'm going to take up walking, or I'm going to become a vegetarian, or I'm going to go to a meditation class, or I'm going to do this or that, and you go and do this thing, and you feel, and this applies to poker too, you feel like you get something out of it. You improve your situation, Now, the thing we do next is the interesting thing. What and I did this for years with like Buddhism and stuff like that, where you then hang on to that thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the truth of the matter is, it's maybe not the walking or the yoga or the meditation or something or whatever it is, the Christianity, it could be anything. Yeah. It's the fact that you allowed yourself to be open to what was happening, regardless of the method that you used.
Yeah.
And I think we lose sight of that. We get that wrong. Yeah. So we think that it's more something like we have done, the thing that we've done, as opposed to the fact that we sort of just had the kind of right attitude. Yeah. And I think that is kind of, that is maybe my life lesson. So it's like the good is the enemy of the great. So every time that you actually sort of learn something, the problem is that the problem is that you then think that it's that thing which is the answer, as opposed to the fact that you were just a bit more open than you normally are.
Yeah. Would you connect that to kind of to just being present all the time, John? If you're saying if
well, even being, it's not so much being, is it being present? I mean, what being present is, even presence itself is the most dangerous thing of all. Yeah. So you get kind of hooked on some kind of notion of presence,
Yeah.
So I think really it's wait a second, I have this difficult decision here. No one worked out. So it's more present. So I spent years sort of exploring kind of Buddhism and meditation and mindfulness and all the rest of it. And many of the top, and I'm happy to, anyone who's listening to this, I'm happy to talk to anyone about this kind of stuff. But many of the top people who teach this stuff are causing problems.
Yeah.
And the problems they're causing are essentially that wait a second, sorry, big hand.
Okay.
I have a guy on tilt, whether he's understanding what's going on here. Oh, he could have me here. That could be bad. Wait a second. Betting with the second note flush here in the river. I didn't call it. This is a very nitty, complex subject, but in some ways it's quite simple, The whole notion, I think, of truth makes an assumption that there is someone to realize the truth. Yeah. Now, when one examines finds, you just find feelings and sensations and thoughts and stuff like this. So despite evidence to the contrary, despite an understandable evidence to the contrary, you actually find that there's, that you can't find anything. Now, many of the great teachers in Buddhism sort of, if they're treating people like cunts, or manipulating people in one way or another, I actually have a kind of question, because then, what's actually going on there? What is actually going on? And what's actually going on, I think, with all of our suffering is we think that there's an identity there. I am angry. This is right. This is wrong. Yeah.
Mm.
We have a definite view on things. And what's the most difficult thing of all is to sit there and go, I don't know.
Yeah.
And this permeates through everything. So many of the, whether it's you've decided you're doing yoga and yoga is the answer. Now it's a different thing, or you're doing meditation or walk or whatever, using solvers, whatever it is that you're doing. It's not that isn't got a lot of sense to it. It's more the fact that if you think that that's everything,
Mm.
that's the difference.
Mm.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Who the fuck wants to hear about that? I'm probably talking shite.
No, interesting. It's definitely, I said, I definitely find this stuff interesting. Good to hear kind of people's opinions on it. So I'm sure other people feel the same. As I said, you're quite an interesting character with, I think when you combine that kind of, the spiritual kind of stuff with the poker player's mind, you can definitely, you can get interesting thoughts,
Yeah, and it's more, what's also interesting is a dog on the street knows the fucking truth about shit. When we say spiritual, that was one of the problems I ended up having, that most people who consider themselves spiritual, and including me for probably 15 years, 20 years, I thought that was something special.
Yeah.
And I was wrong. I was in danger of going down, and did go down, a wrong path. It might have been very positive a lot of the time, maybe more positive than I was. But the truth is that reality is reality, and non-suffering is non-suffering, because you can't say anything about anything.
Yeah.
So
what do you think?
And people tend to hijack. Our understandable tendency is to hijack these things. So going back to poker, it's like, that's really the that's the kind of question. Do you want to go the way of or how much are you able to, what works for you, if you're sort of and you might be selling yourself short in one way or another. So I mean, to put it in one sentence, right? Mostly we know what the fuck is going on. Whether it's some weird spiritual shit or how you're getting on with somebody, the problem is that we add stuff on to what is immediately apparent. So rather than you're trying to go somewhere, what if you didn't add anything on to what was presenting to you? I mean, now that is understandable. If you think you're having an argument with your partner, so what if you didn't actually add anything on in as many places as possible? My guess would be you're probably much less likely to have an argument.
Yeah. Very fair to say.
But there's millions of depths to this not adding things on. But the truth is, so let's say somebody punches you in the face, right? Yeah. So they just mind your own business. You're walking along and somebody punches you in the face. Yeah. Or you get this bad beat in the poker table, let's say. You get this bad beat. Yeah. And you're somebody who struggles with your response to bad beats, or struggles to your response to somebody punching you in the face. Yeah. The truth is, the only thing that actually happened was you had an unpleasant physical sensation on your face. Yeah. Or you had this unpleasant kind of, poker thing happening. Yeah. The other bit, the reaction to that, is an addition.
Yeah.
It's actually an addition.
Yeah.
And whenever you examine it, I mean, I've examined this kind of shit from a meditative point of view.
Yeah.
you know, but just from a sitting there looking at it point of view. And there's actually no connection between reactions
Mm.
and sensations. There's none. There's no connection. There's no connection between, you know, you having an understandable physical unpleasant response to somebody shouting at you or somebody being nasty to you or somebody hitting you. There's no actual connection between that and a reaction. There's a gap, essentially.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a gap, you
Yeah.
know, and arguably all of life, the best of life is the gap.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
It's the gap. It's the gap between what's actually fucking happening and how we respond to it. You know.
Mm. Yeah. So, yeah, you're kind of saying that, you know, when someone hits you in the face, as you said, all that happens is these, you know, whatever, these neurons in the brain go off, and you know, you feel a physical pain, but anything else you kind of derive from that is you just adding stuff on and associating feelings or emotions with the event, when in reality it's just all that happened was you got punched in the face and you felt a physical
And
pain.
that's it.
Yeah.
And that's it. And you can go to the top Buddhist teachers in the world,
Mm.
and many of them just get this wrong.
Okay.
You know, an ordinary person could understand that, like, and that's what you just described there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Could make you a master teacher. You know, but because people go for money or power or something like that, yeah, most of the people teaching this stuff have elements of some kind of power, money, something like that, status. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what they've essentially done is they've added something on to what is a very simple teaching, and because they've added something on, yeah, they won't. They're not able to see it themselves.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Whereas ordinary people can actually see this, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Fair enough. Yeah. 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 As I said, interesting stuff, Andy. Yeah. I'll go back to the aftermath. You might recall some of these emotions you might have felt after you bust in fifth place in 2005. You're after winning 1.75 million. What are you feeling kind of immediately after, and in the
I
kind
was
of
just
week
fucked off.
after?
I was just pissed off. I've never been
Really?
so pissed off.
Yeah.
I have never ever been so pissed off. You know, I was just like, for fuck's sake, you know, because you know I had it like you know, I was just so far ahead of everyone. You
Yeah.
know, at that time in that game, you know,
Yeah.
that there was just no, there was no. All I had to do was just sit, and he's never beaten me, you know.
Yeah. Sorry,
So,
I lost you there for
so
a sec. Yeah, you were just saying
no,
there
I
was
play, like for example, I played Joe Hashim, who I'd be
yeah,
friendly with, you know, a bunch of times, yeah, and he's
yeah,
never beaten me, you know.
yeah,
You know, and you know, I just always had an extra level on him, you know.
mm,
But we haven't played that much, but such as we had, you know, and that was the scenario, you know, at that time, you know. Um, it's like what I'd done is I created this image, uh, which had confused everyone, you know. And then now all I had to do was just take advantage of that, you know, keep the pots a bit small, you know, and
mm,
etc. etc. You know, but I for some odd reason decided not to do that, you know,
yeah,
and I mean, again, I was unfortunate. The hand with Daneman, you know, I had a dead read on Steve Daneman. People, there was a hand basically where the flop was. So imagine there's 50 million chips in the tournament, yeah?
yeah,
54 million chips because there's 10,000 for each player, and there was like 5,300 players or whatever.
yeah,
So at this point, you know, I'd managed to get 23 million of the fucking chips, you know? And so I make some odd error, and then I find myself in a situation against the amateur,
mm,
and there's a flop comes 9 9 6 9 6 9 7 6 9 6 5 9 6 5, yeah.
yeah,
And I bet $1 million. He goes all in for like 10 million. And I had a dead read on it. Like I was, what happens to me a lot in tournaments is, as the tournament goes on, I actually get more and more and more, my reads get better, the longer I've been playing with someone. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what essentially happened here was, I had a dead read on the guy, and it was just obvious he was kind of bluffing.
Yeah.
And so he's an ace and a 6. I call him with a 10 and a 9. And in those days, nobody called people with that kind of hand.
Yeah.
Might sound strange, But in those days, that was like, but no one calls anyone at that point, They just. So I made the call with a 10 and a 9. He hits an ace in the river.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so and then there was another one where I had a race. I had 2 10s and he his king or whatever, and the flop was clean. Then he hit a king on the turn. But I mean, the truth is, in neither of those situations did I need to actually do that. Yeah, So I had situations throughout that, and the bottom line is, when I look back, is I got tired. I was no longer in the present. I was sort of had my hand sort of half in the cup. I wasn't. I was trying to. I mean, in a way, I was trying to actually, and this is a huge thing for me. So the way I play poker, I can actually sometimes just boil things down to one sentence. So this would be a sentence I can often just boil every single mistake I've made in 30 years down to. Yeah. And that is, I'm forcing the situation. I'm adding something on. I'm forcing it, but forcing it. It's like I'm trying to force something.
Yeah.
Rather than just taking on what's actually happening.
Yeah.
So for ages, I was just there. I was just taking on what was actually happening. And then all of a sudden, I decided to force something. It's like you're entitled to something. You have to have this. You deserve this. Yeah. Whereas for me, when I'm actually playing good poker, I deserve nothing. I have an attitude of, I have exactly equal respect for everybody. I never think, oh, I'm a better player than that guy. Yeah. All I'm thinking is, can I possibly find a way to beat this guy in this hand? Is it possible? What do I think he's got? What's the story?
Yeah.
And that's all. That's it. That's it. Nothing more than that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the forcing it. Excuse me. Forcing it is. I feel similar. If I look back at any of the big mistakes I've made in poker, it's very rarely that it's very rarely some kind of small technical error you've made. It's invariably, as you said, trying to force it sums up pretty much.
Yeah, and I mean, how often Yeah, now, I'm not saying everyone has that level of sensitivity, yeah? But what I found in talking to people is they've just a lot more sensitivity than they realize. That's all. And that's really the question. They knew, and whether it's an amateur player or whoever it is, it turns out that they had more sensitivity and more appreciation of what was going on than they actually. And if that's the case, I mean, you're saying that. I mean, many people are saying that. This is the biggest single factor in poker, then, arguably.
Yeah, I think so. I mean,
and an interesting thing is, let's say whether you're an amateur player or a professional who's getting better, wherever you are, every time you get a little bit better, the tendency is to move out of the present. It's sort of to then or settle down. Yeah, one of the great questions is, whenever people get older, why do they get tighter as poker players? What is that all about? Like, in general, why do they get tighter? Why do they sort of all of a sudden sort of become more cautious. Yeah.
Yeah. It's yeah, you think it's general people get more kind of conservative as they get older.
Well,
they're
why is that? Why is that? I think that'd be fairly agreed. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
What?
So one, yeah, definitely one angle I think is, and again, everyone's very different, and you know, not all old fellas are tight. You know, that goes without saying. But
Yeah, it's a general statement.
yeah,
General
generally,
statement. You know.
I think yeah, maybe patience. The older you get, the more patient you become, and as you said, you just let the game come to you, let the mistakes come to you, and you just kind of take advantage of them. Think that, yeah, like would that be fair to say? Do you think?
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of different ways of looking at it,
Yeah,
but I think that the maybe the way which is so I'm just in a very big hand here.
yeah. No.
Made a very risky maneuver. Yeah, it's a very it's bad day. I'm gonna let it go. The the oh, this guy keeps getting lucky against me. There's lots of different ways of looking at that question.
Mm,
But so I'm not, my way is just one way of looking at it. But
yeah,
what I think actually is going down a lot of the time is you sort of, let's say you've won some poker tournament, you've done something and it's gone well.
yeah,
The tendency is to sort of hang on to it somehow. You know, the tendency is to get stuck there. So
yeah,
the very thing which has helped you, the very thing which is, is the problem. Yeah. So imagine you've got some old guy and you're sitting there playing, and he's like really, really tight, and
yeah.
you're going, what the fuck's going on with this guy? And it turns out that what's actually going on is that he 3, 4, 5, 8. Wait a second, I have a very big hand. Well, big hand here. It's worth $1,000. And I've got the guy to put his money in. And I should be a 71% favorite. Oh, fuck's sake.
Oh, I got there.
Not good. You guys are not lucky. 71% favorite. No good. The Okay, I better focus. The what were we saying there?
We thought as people get older, you were saying that they're hanging on to guys playing really tight, and they're hanging on to kind of something maybe.
Yeah, but I'm saying let's bring it down to, even as the weeks and days go by,
Yeah,
that's our habitual tendency is to hang on to stuff as opposed to simply being present. Yeah.
yeah,
And that's really the thing.
yeah,
So that's what we're always kind of fighting against. So if one acknowledges that that's the case,
yeah,
then now you're in an interesting space. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Do you think that's kind of similar to Joe? If you're playing a cash game and Joe, you're Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, you lose $1,000 every day, and you're coming into Thursday thinking I need to win back $3,000 before I'm even. Whereas in reality, you're coming in to play poker on Thursday, and all that's happening is you're coming in to
Well,
play.
I don't know. Did you watch The Last Dance?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I wait. Now look, I'm in another pot, and I have the nuts and 2 pair on a rainbow board, and the guy has fuck off, right? Now that works out a bit better. A very big favorite against.
Okay, gee,
But it's two grand pot.
I
So
would.
he had like one card split it. Yeah.
Okay,
So
you're in good shape.
so he had one card to split it. That was it. Um, the wait a second. Another difficult hand. What was I saying there?
You asked me if I watched The Last Dance.
Oh yeah, The Last Dance. This is brilliant, right? So one of the things I've done over the years, yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, I am thinking of. I mean, I'm thinking of setting up a real high performance sort of thing, like a serious thing. I've always 20 years I've thought of doing it, you know, and
Yeah.
it would be based on just meeting people where they're at, and getting them to improve,
Yeah.
you know, their position, you know. And
Yeah.
I've done all sorts of techniques and fucking new names, you know, loads and loads of things, yeah.
Yeah.
So, but in some senses, I don't teach techniques. I don't do anything like that. It's more just, you know, I just try and figure out where someone is and what their next step is.
Yeah.
But one of the things I've done over the years, I spent years and years and years studying the greatest sports people around, trying to figure out, you know, what the story was, yeah, with them. Unbelievable. So that was another 2%er I got done by. So the Michael Jordan, you saw The Last Dance, yeah?
Yeah.
Now, do you remember the beginning of episode 10?
Not specifically episode 10. So
Right. So
they're
there was
gonna
this bit. There was this bit
six
where
of
they
different.
started talking.
Yeah.
So
Sorry.
they
Yeah.
start talking about this journalist who'd followed. He did actually a photographic book on Michael Jordan. You know,
Yeah.
predominantly photographic sort of book. But he sort of basically said that Johnson was more present. He was just present all of the time.
Yeah.
You know, he was never not present. You know, and that was what was made that was what made it different for Johnson. Yeah. And 1 second, a difficult decision here. And you know, he said a lot of people, you know, they might go to ashrams, they might do this or that or the other, yeah. But Johnston, you know, and try and get present. But Johnston, he simply just was present, yeah.
Yeah.
And one of the most fascinating ways of describing that was, you know, other guys, and I'm sure this is an easy thing to relate to in poker, is other guys when they're taking the shot, yeah. They're thinking, oh, would I miss this shot? Johnson's attitude, or Jordan's attitude was, how can I miss a shot that I haven't taken yet?
Yeah.
Do you know? And that really is all there is to it. So you think of that imagine if people are being really honest when they're playing this hand, you know, how many people are just actually playing that hand? The mathematicians may be saying that, oh, that's what they're doing, you know, but most people aren't just mathematicians. So the question is, you know, that's your question, you know, and I looked at that with thinking, Jesus, you know, if I'd had that attitude, that would have been absolutely amazing, you know, but you know, I didn't. Yeah. So that's really the question, you know, I didn't actually have that attitude.
Yeah.
So, but if I had, that would have been amazing, you know, that and whenever I'm playing well, it's just that shot. It's just that hand. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think as well it's is that something that could be used kind of against other people? If you can get inside the heads of other people and kind of figure out what's their fear here, Joe? Is there fear of, you know, missing the shot, or, you know, losing a big pot, or getting bluffed in a big spot, or calling when you've the nuts?
Well, it applies to everything, you know. It applies. That's the point. It applies to kind of everything, you know. So whatever it is that you know you think is going on, it actually applies to everything.
Yeah.
The only thing is, you know, how capable one is of doing it. And obviously, someone like Jordan was really capable of doing that. Other people knew they weren't capable of doing that. But that's really what it comes down to,
Yeah.
So you have to, always as to how good I am at that. So it's not just a kind of, it's a bit like you go up to somebody and, they're an alcoholic and you just kind of go, all you have to do is just stop drinking. Well, that might work. You might have to say a bit more,
Yeah.
So the question always is, what, what's the dialogue you need to have,
Yeah. What's the story
Right, I
behind
have
the
to go
story?
because I have to kind of see if my
Yeah.
wife is still up. She's on an online award ceremony for a documentary she made about a gay bull.
About a gay bull.
Yeah. It may have won. Oh, maybe she's gone to bed. Okay, I better go in
Okay.
and check on her.
Andy, thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah, I hope the sound was okay. The sound seemed a bit dodgy sometimes.
Yeah, I'll have a look when editing it, but it should be okay. I'm sure we'll get something. So thanks a million for joining me, Andy, and enjoy the rest of the
pleasure. Anytime. Give me a shout anytime.
Brilliant. Thanks a million. We'll talk to you soon.
Bye.